All right, get ready because tonight we're diving headfirst into some seriously heartwarming stuff. We're talking about those stories, you know the ones I mean, that just completely restore your faith in humanity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The kind of stories that make you want to hug a random person, pay for someone's coffee, just spread good vibes everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And lucky for us, we've got a whole bunch of them from tonight's episode of Heartbeat, Human Connections. 10 stories, each one more inspiring than the last.
It's amazing to me, how these stories come from all over the world, but they all kind of tap into this like universal human need to connect and help each other out. It's like a global tapestry, but made of kindness.
Love that. Okay, so let's zoom in on a few of these threads of kindness, shall we? First up, we've got a story from Cairo. Imagine a children's hospital, a place that can be kind of scary and sterile.
Right. Hospitals can be tough. But in this case, a local artist stepped up and transformed the whole space with these bright, playful murals. Turned what could be a pretty intimidating environment into a world of color and fun.
I love that. It's like taking art therapy to a whole new level.
Yeah.
And speaking of creative kindness, we've got this great story from Sydney.
Yeah, this one's all about community and sharing stories. There's a bookshop owner there who started a community book swap where people can bring in books they've finished and trade them for new ones.
So cool. So not only are they encouraging people to read, but they're also creating this awesome little network of like literary exchange. I bet that bookshop is full of conversations and recommendations and all sorts of good stuff.
For sure. It's a perfect example of how something as simple as a book can create connections and build a community. And, speaking of community, this next story really takes that idea to heart.
Oh, I think I know what you're going to say. Johannesburg. Right.
Mm.
The one where the whole neighborhood came together to rebuild that family's house after it burned down.
That's the one. It's so much more than just neighbors helping neighbors. It's a really powerful testament to just how resilient people can be and how, when things get tough, we're stronger together.
And it's not even just about the practical help, right? The rebuilding, the donations. It's the emotional support, too, that sense of belonging, knowing your community has your back no matter what.
Absolutely. It speaks to that deep human need for connection and belonging. And sometimes, that connection comes in the simplest way, like offering someone a warm meal.
Exactly. Like that chef in Buenos Aires,
Right.
right? The one who's making free dinners every month just for single parents. Talk about seeing a need and stepping up to fill it.
Couldn't agree more. It's not even just about the food. It's about creating a space where single parents can get together, talk about their experiences, maybe even get a little break from the everyday stress.
It's like a sport group, but with amazing food. What a great idea. So we've got artist therapy, community book swaps, neighbors rebuilding homes, and chefs serving up support with a side of deliciousness.
And let's not forget about that story from Tokyo, the one where a young guy gave up his seat on a packed train, and it created a ripple effect of kindness throughout the whole train car.
Oh yeah, that's a classic example of how one small act can be so contagious and inspire others to pay it forward.
Totally. It's like tossing a pebble into a pond and watching the ripples spread out. You never know how far your actions will reach or who they'll affect.
So true. And speaking of reaching out and touching lives, I keep thinking about that teenager in Toronto who started the Warm Hugs Project to knit scarves for homeless people during the winter.
What a fantastic example of young people being compassionate and taking action. It's so inspiring to see young people taking the initiative and using their talents to make a real difference in their community.
Yeah, and it's more than just the physical warmth of the scarves. It's the message behind them, the
Mhm.
care and concern they represent, like a wearable hug,
Mhm.
a real expression of human connection.
Absolutely. And sometimes, that connection comes through music. Like that story from London with that group of friends who saw a homeless man who clearly loved music.
Oh, yeah. They all chipped in and bought him a used guitar. And now he's sharing his music with everyone, putting smiles on people's faces and creating this space of joy and connection right there on the street.
I love that story. It really shows how even a small act of kindness can help someone unlock their potential, give them a platform, a way to share their talents with the world.
It's true. Music has this power to connect people, bridge gaps, create moments of shared humanity. And that's what this whole deep dive is really about, isn't it? Recognizing those moments, celebrating them, and hopefully inspiring a few of our own along the way.
Couldn't have said it better myself. But hey, before we get too carried away, let's take a little break. We've covered a lot of ground here, literally.
Good point. We've jumped from continent to continent, story to story. But we've only just scratched the surface of what makes these stories so powerful.
You got it. So when we come back, let's dig a little deeper into the why. Why do these stories hit us so hard? What is it about us, about human nature, that makes us crave these acts of kindness, both giving and receiving? Stay with us. So we've traveled from those busy streets of Cairo all the way to a quiet little bookshop in Sydney.
From the incredible community spirit in Johannesburg to the beautiful music on a London street corner.
And each story has given us a glimpse of that huge capacity for kindness that humans have no matter where they are in the world.
It's like we went on this whirlwind tour of the human heart. We got to see all the different ways it can be filled with compassion.
That's a beautiful way to put it. I like that a lot. And as I think about all these stories, what really strikes me is that they're not just these feel-good moments that make us smile. There's something much deeper going on.
Okay, now I'm really curious. What do you mean?
Well, I think these stories connect with something very basic about what it means to be human. We're social creatures. We're meant to connect with each other and belong. And acts of kindness, even little ones, remind us of how interconnected we all are.
It's interesting you say that because one thing that really stood out to me as we talked about these stories was the idea of ripple effects. Like how one person's kindness can create this chain reaction of generosity and compassion.
Exactly. Remember that story from Tokyo, the young man who gave up his seat on the train? That one act started a whole wave of kindness that spread through the entire train car. It's a perfect example of how contagious these acts can be.
And it doesn't have to be some big dramatic gesture or heroic act either. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness are the ones that make the biggest difference. Like that viewer who saw their neighbor struggling to fix their fence and just offered to help.
Right. It's those everyday moments where we decide to look beyond ourselves and help someone who needs it. And it's fascinating. There's all this research coming out showing that these acts of kindness aren't just good for our souls, they're good for our bodies too.
Oh, really? Now this I have to hear more about. Tell me about this research.
Well, studies show that when we do kind things for others, our brains release these chemicals called endorphins. They're the feel-good chemicals, and they can help reduce stress, boost our mood, and even make our immune system stronger.
So basically, kindness is like a superpower. I want some of that.
That's exactly it. And it's not just the person doing the kind thing who benefits. The person receiving it gets a surge of positive emotions too, and that can create a sense of well-being, connection, and it might even inspire them to be kind to someone else.
Like a never-ending cycle of good vibes. I love it. And I think that's what makes shows like Heartbeat Human Connection so important. They remind us that we all have this capacity for kindness inside us.
Absolutely. They're like an antidote to all the negativity and cynicism we see every day in the news and online. They remind us that there's still so much good in the world, and we all have a part in making that goodness grow.
It's more than just watching these stories and getting all warm and fuzzy inside. It's about taking that inspiration and turning it into action.
Right. It's about asking ourselves, how can I be part of that heartbeat of human connection in my own community?
Hmm.
It doesn't have to be something huge or complicated. Maybe you give someone a genuine compliment, hold a door open for a stranger, or just listen to a friend who needs someone to talk to.
It's those little everyday acts of kindness that, when enough people do them, can create a huge wave of positivity and compassion in our communities.
And speaking of those ripple effects, there's one story from Heartbeat, Human Connections, that perfectly captures this idea. Have you heard about the kindness challenge that's been going around?
Oh, yeah. The one where people do 3 kind things in one day and then challenge 3 friends to do the same.
That's the one. It's such a simple idea, but it's so powerful, and it's taking off online like crazy. People are sharing their stories, inspiring each other, and it's creating this incredible web of kindness that's spreading all over the world.
It's like a global virtual hug. I love it. Okay, so we've talked about the science behind kindness, how it creates ripple effects, and how we can put it into action.
But there's one last piece of the puzzle I think we should look at. It's the idea that kindness isn't just something we do, it's a way of being.
Ooh, okay, now that sounds deep. I'm ready. Tell me more. So we've talked about kindness being contagious, like it can actually improve your health and how we need to put it into action. But now you're saying it's a way of being. I'm not sure I totally get that.
Yeah, it's more than just doing nice things every now and then. It's about developing this mindset of compassion and empathy, moving through the world with an open heart and looking for the good in everyone.
So it's not just doing kind acts, but like a whole approach to life, a way of seeing how we interact with others.
Exactly. It's about making a conscious choice to be kind, turning it into a habit. It's about noticing those chances we get every day to make someone's day a little better, offer a hand, or just be there for someone and listen.
So like weaving kindness into everything we do, making it part of who we are and how we treat the world around us.
I love that. That's a great way to put it. And the best part is, you don't need to make these grand gestures or have big plans. It's the small, seemingly insignificant moments where we choose to be kind that matter most.
Like that story from Heartbeat, Human Connections, about the person who saw their neighbor struggling to carry groceries and just helped them out. It probably didn't seem like a big deal, but I bet it made that neighbor's day so much better.
And you never know, maybe that act of kindness inspired the neighbor to do something kind for someone else. It's incredible how little things like that can create a whole chain reaction of positivity.
It's like those pay it forward things you see at coffee shops, right? One person buys a coffee for the person behind them, then that person does the same. And it just keeps going. Such a great reminder that even small things can have a big impact.
Couldn't agree more. And I think that's a really important takeaway from our deep dive into these amazing stories. Kindness doesn't need to be complicated or overwhelming. It can be as simple as a smile, a kind word, or just being willing to listen to someone.
So as we wrap up our look at Heartbeat, Human Connections, what's one thing you hope listeners take away from this conversation?
I hope they feel inspired to see kindness as more than just actions, but a way of life. Approaching each day with an open heart, a willingness to give, and making the world a little brighter, one interaction at a time.
Beautifully said. And to everyone listening out there, we encourage you to share your own stories of kindness. Tell us about an act of generosity you've seen or been part of. Let's keep this going and inspire each other to make kindness a bigger part of our lives.
And don't forget to check out Heartbeat, Human Connections, for more heartwarming stories and inspiration.
Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and keep on diving deep.